Okay, so tonight's idea. It's simple, maybe a little uncomfortable, and it's probably something you've already felt, even if you haven't quite put it into words. The truth doesn't win anymore. The vibe does. That's what we're digging into in this deep dive. An era where, well, how something feels seems to matter more than if it's actually real.
Yeah, and what's really striking is just how pervasive this is. It's not just like an online thing or a media thing. It feels like it's everywhere now. And if you look closer, there are these clear patterns driving at things like speed seems way more important than substance now. And if something sounds coherent, well, that often passes for credibility. Plus, the way we interact with information, the interface, it kind of papers over all the cracks, the contradictions.
Yeah.
So our mission here is really to unpack these forces, see how they affect your daily information diet.
That's a great way to frame it. Let's start with that first one. Speed matters more than substance. It really does feel like we're on this constant information treadmill. What does that actually look like day to day?
Well, it's a pretty fundamental shift, The sources we looked at really highlight how digital platforms, they just reward speed, brevity, fast sharing that gets prioritized over, say, deep analysis or checking facts. Think about it. A headline blows up in minutes, right? And that shapes how people see things long before any careful reporting or fact-checking can even get started.
So it catches fire before anyone can really examine it.
Exactly. And we get these little dopamine hits from scrolling, from quick consumption. It trains us, kind of, to want that fast flow, which makes the slower work, the sometimes uncomfortable work of verifying stuff, feel almost pointless or just too slow.
Inefficient, yeah. Less about the actual picture, more about how fast you see a picture.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So how does that speed connect to the second point you made about coherence sounds like credibility? Because, coherence sounds good, doesn't it? Like something should make sense.
It does, yeah, on the surface. But this is where it gets tricky. Our research suggests it's less about strict logical sense and more about the feeling of a story holding together. So if a narrative, even if it's misleading, is told really smoothly, consistently, maybe across different places or by different voices,
Okay.
our brains tend to think, okay, this seems credible. It feels right because it hangs together well, even if the facts underneath are, shaky or just not all there.
I see, like an echo chamber effect almost.
Precisely. Repeated messaging, consistent framing, even without solid proof, it starts to feel valid, powerful even.
So consistency can create this illusion of truth
Yeah.
that's subtle. And then the last piece, the digital interface smoothing things over.
Yeah.
How does that actually work when, you're just scrolling through your feed?
Right. This is about user experience design, but with a twist. It's not just about making things look nice. Our sources point to how things like infinite scroll or these curated feeds, even the way comments are integrated,
Yeah.
they can blend completely different types of information, even contradictory stuff, into one seamless stream. You might flick past a carefully fact-checked article, and the very next thing is maybe some wild conspiracy theory, but it looks the same format, same visual weight. It makes it genuinely harder to spot the differences, the conflicts, the gaps.
Because it all just flows together smoothly.
Exactly. The interface wants you to keep scrolling, keep engaging. It's not really designed for critical thinking breaks. It's designed to be frictionless. And sometimes friction is exactly what you need to stop and question things.
Wow, that really makes you think about the tools we use every day, that the design itself might be nudging us away from spotting what's real.
Yeah.
So putting this all together, what's the takeaway for us, for you, listening?
Well, it really brings up a key question for reflection, doesn't it? How does this whole shift, this environment where how something feels matters more than whether it's real, actually impact your understanding, your daily choices? It's worth considering looking at the information you take in.
Yeah, absolutely. We've kind of sketched out this world where the vibe, that feeling, often wins out over the truth, driven by speed, by that pull of a story that just sounds right, and maybe even by the slick platforms we use. So the final thought to leave you with is, when the truth doesn't automatically win, when the vibe does, what does that really mean for how you navigate the information shaping your world?
We often talk about truth,
Yeah.
like it's simple, something you just know.
Right. Straightforward.
Yeah, but what if it's way more complicated? Our source material for this deep dive, it really flips that idea. It says, truth is messy.
Messy. I like that. It also says it requires context, nuance.
And discomfort. That one really stood out. So that's really our mission today, to unpack this, this challenging idea of truth.
And how it links up with language, right?
Exactly. And kind of surprisingly, how artificial intelligence fits into all this. We're using these really concise but powerful observations you shared with us.
So the question for you listening is, what does this actually mean for how you sort through information in, the world today?
Let's dive in.
Yeah.
So first off, just thinking about this idea for you listening, that truth isn't always neat. Our source doesn't just say messy. It insists truth demands context, nuance.
And that discomfort again.
Right. It's not some comfy blanket.
Yeah.
More like a puzzle, maybe,
Yeah.
where the important bits are often the tricky ones.
And it's worth thinking about why those elements are so crucial for, real understanding.
Okay.
That discomfort, especially, I think it often signals you're actually hitting some genuine insight because it pushes against what you already think you know.
So it challenges you.
Exactly. So when we only look for truths that feel comfortable, well, we miss things, don't we? We miss depth, different viewpoints.
We miss the friction.
We miss the friction. Yeah, the very thing that leads to real growth. It makes you wonder, what important stuff are we missing if we just avoid that feeling?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
How do we actually lean into that, though? Is it about, seeking out stuff that challenges us? Or is it more internal?
I think it's both, actually. It's about asking yourself, what here clashes with my views, and then just sitting with it for a moment.
Instead of batting it away.
Right. Don't just dismiss it. It's sort of like lifting a heavy weight mentally. It might feel a bit strenuous.
But it builds strength?
Exactly. Builds mental strength.
I like that. Okay, so if truth is messy, let's talk about language. The source calls it smooth flowing.
Creating this illusion of order. Yeah.
That's such a contrast, isn't it, between the messy truth and the smooth language?
It absolutely is. And that's a key insight, I think. How language, just by its nature, often streamlines things, simplifies.
Sort of papers over the cracks.
Yeah, precisely. It can build these narratives that make even shaky ideas seem solid. Like a nice, smooth road built over, really rocky ground. Looks stable.
But the foundation might be iffy.
Right. So for you listening, it means you got to look past that surface polish sometimes.
Makes me think of those, super polished company reports. They look so official. But then you dig a bit, and it's all assumptions. We've all seen that.
We have. And that actually brings us neatly to, well, maybe a more extreme example.
Which is AI.
Right.
Right? This is where it gets really interesting. The source connects it straight to language with this phrase. AI is language without friction.
Just pause on that for a second. Language without friction. It's incredibly insightful. So think about it. If truth needs that messiness, that friction, and even human language, smooth as it seems, still has tiny bits of friction. Our doubts, our biases, even just struggling to find the right words.
Our humanity, basically.
Our humanity, yes. Yeah. What happens when AI steps in? It produces language so perfectly, so smoothly.
Almost too perfectly.
Maybe, without any of that inherent friction of, say, lived experience or genuine doubt. It's kind of like looking at a photorealistic painting versus a photo.
Oh, interesting analogy.
One has the artist's hand, maybe tiny imperfections, brushstrokes. The other can be flawless, but different.
Lacking that human texture.
Exactly. So for you, this frictionless information needs a new kind of critical eye, a different way of engaging.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got messy truth.
Which needs context and nuance.
And even discomfort. Then we have human language, which can be deceptively smooth.
An illusion of order, sometimes.
And then AI language, uniquely frictionless.
Yeah.
The big takeaway seems to be that maybe the discomfort isn't a problem. It's actually a feature.
It's the signal. Yeah, the signal you might be getting closer to something real.
Something authentic.
Right. So if we tie this all together, thinking about the bigger picture for you, listening, what does it mean for your understanding when truth itself requires friction? But the language delivering it, especially from AI, increasingly offers none.
That's the challenge.
That's the challenge. AI's perfect prose isn't just convenient. It asks something new of us. It means we have to consciously cultivate our own friction, our own critical questions, our own discomfort, maybe to really figure out what's genuine in this incredibly smooth, frictionless information world we're navigating. Welcome to the deep dive. You know, for decades, when we thought about persuasion, we probably imagined loud voices, maybe shocking ads trying to grab your attention.
Right, the classic hard sell approach.
Exactly. But the sources we looked at for this deep dive point to something really different happening now, something fascinating.
Hmm.
It seems that whole instinct, that expectation of being shocked or pushed, is actually being used against us subtly. We're seeing this fundamental shift. It's not about jolting you anymore.
It's about soothing you almost.
That's it, soothing you. That's the surprising twist our sources revealed. This modern persuasion machine, it's not trying to hit you over the head.
No, it's more about disarming your critical thinking by
Yeah.
making you feel, well, comfortable, at ease.
Right, instead of challenged or confronted.
Yeah.
So our mission today is really to unpack how this super subtle influence works, and maybe more importantly, what it means for you, navigating your digital world every day.
Yeah, it's a crucial thing to understand.
So how does this soothing thing actually play out? The core idea, based on our sources, is that this machine actively mirrors your own language,
Mm.
and it adapts to your personal beliefs, your preferences. It's not yelling, buy this. It's making you feel like it already gets you perfectly.
And it's deeper than just showing you things you've liked before, isn't it?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
echoing your values, maybe your concerns, even the specific words you use. Our sources say this mirroring taps right into that basic human need for validation, for belonging.
And often completely beneath our conscious radar. It's a big shift from that external pressure we used to expect.
Yeah, to something that feels more internal, resonant.
And the consequence of that method, that mirroring, is really the key takeaway here.
Okay.
When a system reflects your language, your likes, maybe even beliefs you haven't explicitly stated,
Yeah.
you don't feel sold to at all.
Right.
Instead, you get this feeling of being genuinely seen. And that's powerful psychologically. Well, think about a traditional sales pitch. It often feels like someone trying to assert dominance or push you.
Yeah,
Right?
sure. You put your guard up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But feeling seen, it validates your existing view of the world. It removes that skepticism because the message feels like it came from you, or at least fits perfectly with your own thoughts.
Huh. Okay.
Our sources show this builds trust almost instantly. And it reduces that mental effort, that cognitive load. It just feels right because it sounds like your own inner voice.
And you see this, or rather experience this constantly, like every day, probably without even noticing.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about your TikTok feed, or Spotify giving you recommendations, or really any personalized feed you scroll through.
Those are perfect examples.
Our sources point right at them. You know that weird feeling like, whoa, how did it know I wanted this song? Or this app just really gets me.
That uncanny feeling.
That's exactly what our sources are digging into. These platforms totally embody this soothing approach. The whole experience feels so uniquely tailored. Like they know what you want before you do.
And it's not just luck, of course. It's these incredibly sophisticated algorithms. They're watching every tiny thing you do online.
What you pause on, what you skip.
Even the tone of your comments, perhaps. They're constantly building and refining this predictive model of, well, you.
Yeah.
Your preferences, your perspectives.
So connecting this to the bigger picture for the listener, feeling seen online is actually pretty significant then.
It's profound. It really shapes how you interact with everything, information, services, even how you see yourself in that digital space.
Because it's seamless, non-confrontational.
Right. It's designed to make you feel understood, validated, which naturally is great for keeping you engaged, keeping you using the service.
That makes sense. That feeling of being effortlessly understood, it sounds great on the surface. But does this mirroring come with downsides? Did our sources touch on how feeling so understood all the time might, shape what information we see, maybe limit exposure to different views?
That's a really important question to ask. And yes, our sources do highlight that. While the immediate feeling is comfort, validation.
Which feels good.
Which feels good, exactly. But a constant diet of perfectly mirrored content can, perhaps inadvertently, just keep reinforcing what you already believe.
Like an echo chamber, but a really comfortable one.
Pretty much. It's not necessarily a deliberate negative thing from the platform's perspective, more like a natural outcome of systems built to maximize engagement through resonance, through making you feel good.
Okay.
It can create this environment where different perspectives just don't even show up on your radar because the system learns you prefer stuff that already aligns with you.
Yep.
Your digital world starts to feel almost perfectly harmonious. A little too harmonious, perhaps.
Right. So pulling these threads together then, the big takeaway from this deep dive seems to be this really profound shift in how persuasion works now. It's moved away from that overt, pushy influence towards something much more subtle, highly personalized, designed specifically to make you feel understood, not pressured.
Less about force, more about resonance. Finding that perfect echo.
Finding the echo.
Which leaves us with a pretty important question for you, the listener, to think about. If the main goal now is for these systems to make you feel perfectly seen,
Yeah.
what does that actually mean for how we perceive our own beliefs? How we see the information we get fed every day in this increasingly mirrored digital world?
Yeah.
Something to chew on, definitely.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a really interesting twist on a classic idea. You know Marshall McLuhan's famous line, "The medium is the message"?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Foundational stuff.
Right. But what our sources are suggesting for right now, 2025, is that it's maybe more accurate to say the interface is the message.
Mm.
Which sounds similar, but it's a pretty big shift, isn't it? It means how something looks, how it's designed, its polish. That's what's actually communicating the meaning now. Maybe even more than the content.
It really is. And what does that actually mean, in practice for you listening? Well, our sources give some, frankly, quite startling examples. Think about AI influencers.
Oh, yeah, those are uncanny.
Right. They're built to seem perfectly human, totally authentic.
Yeah.
Or deepfake news anchors.
Delivering what looks like a totally legit broadcast.
Exactly. It looks professional. It feels right. And so the challenge for you becomes sorting out, fluency versus truth.
Fluency versus truth. I like that.
Yeah, because the interface is so smooth, so convincing. It's incredibly easy to just accept it as accurate. It feels true, even if it's completely fabricated.
So, okay, if the interface itself is kind of whispering or maybe shouting its own message, how do you even begin to navigate that? That's really our goal for this deep dive, isn't it? How can you, the listener, tell the difference between a real signal, something genuinely important or true, and something that just looks like a signal because the interface is so persuasive?
Yeah, and it's definitely more complicated than just like basic fact checking. Our sources really dig into how these interfaces are designed quite deliberately to tap into our mental shortcuts.
How so?
Well, things like information hierarchy. What's big and bold? What gets left out? What's just kind of implied by the visuals?
Little stuff.
Exactly. Or using images that really hit you emotionally.
Yeah.
Even, making engagement feel like a game. It's all designed to guide your thinking, sometimes bypass critical thought altogether. It's basically influenced by design.
And that plays right into our own psychology, doesn't it?
Totally.
Our sources put it bluntly. We're not neutral observers. We want to feel correct.
It's a powerful drive.
Yeah, and I know I've done it. You click on something that looks super sleek or download an app that promises everything because it just looks so professional.
And
then you find there's not much substance there. It's that pull, that desire to agree with something that just feels right, that these interfaces exploit so well.
Precisely. That desire for things to make sense, to feel coherent, makes us vulnerable. The material points out that when an interface is really polished, really consistent, totally frictionless, it just radiates authority, trustworthiness.
Even with no real substance underneath.
Exactly. Zero substance needed sometimes. It's dangerously easy to mistake that shiny package for actual value. Our sources call it the truthiness trap. Feels true.
Okay, so that leads us to something practical for you, the listener, a tool, maybe. Our sources talk about vibe skepticism.
Vibe skepticism.
Yeah. It's not about being cynical about everything, right? It's more about critical awareness. So, questioning not just the facts, but the whole presentation, the underlying vibe. Is this interface designed to genuinely inform me, or is it mostly about persuasion? Or just keeping me entertained?
Yeah, or just keeping you clicking.
Right. Like, where are the sources? If it looks super professional, but you can't find any citations, that's a bit of a flag, isn't it?
Absolutely. In this era where the interface is delivering so much of the message, you have to question its presentation just as much as the content. That polish, that smoothness, that convincing vibe, it needs scrutiny.
So looking beneath the surface gloss.
Exactly. Does the design rely heavily on emotional triggers but offer very little factual support? Is the call to action, like share this now, way stronger than the actual information provided? These are the kinds of tells our sources say we should be looking for.
So here's the final thought for you to take away. If the interface truly is the message now, what does that mean for the very next piece of information you encounter? Whether that's scrolling your newsfeed, a post online, maybe even a slick new app you're thinking of downloading. How will you practice that vibe skepticism to really unpack what's being communicated beyond just the words?
Subscribe now.